You feel strangely alert as you jump out of bed the next morning. You feel like you should be tired, but you're not. You get dressed slowly and methodically into your jumpsuit, your brain surprisingly quiet, although you weren't quite sure if that was because you were worried about your upcoming mission to capture Kylo Ren, or if it was because you were going to see Poe again very, very soon. Fully dressed, you sit on the armchair of the living room couch for what seems like almost an hour, letting your thoughts just drift idly through your mind before you hear the familiar knock on the door. You get up and open it immediately, looking up at Poe without any hint of awkwardness or reserve. "Hey," you say quickly as you shut the door behind you. "Ready to go?" "Always am," he replies, and you walk down the empty corridor side by side. Your face is completely impassive, as is his, giving nothing away. Maybe you both were going to forget that the kiss ever happened. You knew Rey and Finn had been encouraging it, but at the same time, you weren't sure if they really realized the extent of your feelings for Kylo Ren like Latson did. You just couldn't really be sure of how you felt about anything or anyone right now. "So, what are we working on today?" you ask after a pause that stretches on for far too long. "Well, I think docking would probably be a good bet," Poe replies. "I don't think the First Order would be too happy with you if you crashed into their hangar." "Yeah," you say with a small laugh. "So does this mean we're going to be staying in atmosphere again?" "Yeah," Poe replies. "There's a mock-up of a Star Destroyer hangar entrance we use for practice sessions about 30 clicks west." "Sounds good," you reply simply, and you're beginning to think he wants to forget about the kiss entirely as you settle into the transport shuttle that you will be piloting to the First Order Star Destroyer. You had just made yourself comfortable in the co-pilot seat when Poe taps you on the shoulder. "Oh no. If you're flying this thing yourself, you get to sit in the captain's chair." You sigh and obediently slide over into the seat that Poe usually commanded. You buckle yourself in and turn to him, waiting for instructions. "Oh, don't look at me," Poe says, holding up his hands. "You're the one that's going to have to fly there, so I hope you know what you're doing." You grumble something low in your throat as your eyes scan the console in front of you, taking in all of the knobs and switches that you had seen Poe press before you had switched seats. "All right," you say with some finality, turning to him. "I can do this just fine." Poe cracks a grin as he leans back in his chair. "All right. Prove it then." You noted that the control scheme for the Omega shuttle was a bit different than the Lambda you had started with, but not by much. The main difference you were aware of was that the flight and thruster controls felt much smoother. To your left was a panel almost identical to the one on the Ascension, minus the row of 4 reactor control buttons, but the console's knobs and switches were rearranged significantly. Where the Ascension's console switches had seemed haphazard and chaotically arranged, these were neatly aligned and grouped by their various functions and labeled accordingly, with the notable addition of a hyperdrive system, shield generators, and what looked to be onboard weapons. Confident you knew where everything was, you turned back to Poe. "Okay, so one question," you say slowly. "What's this training mock-up called? If I'm going to get a flight clearance around it from control, I need a name." Poe raises his eyebrows, clearly impressed, but you just look away, not wanting him to catch you blushing. "We call it the Resurgent Class Rock, but officially it's called the Bombing Range. You'll understand both names once you see it." You tilt your head to the side in thanks as you turn to the comlink. "Control, this is Moonstaff, commanding Shuttle Dalamus, requesting clearance for departure through Alpha and subsequent flight operations in the vicinity of the bombing range." "Moonstaff, you're cleared for Alpha. Opening doors now, and tracking has been instructed to disregard your maneuvers." As the corresponding stripe begins flashing, you disengage the inertial lock and flip up the automatic control switch. The shuttle smoothly glides along the line and out the door into the clearing. After the wings unfolded, the switch automatically flipped back down. That's helpful. Thinking back to your first flight with Poe, you pull the flight stick outward and the shuttle smoothly rises in response. Once you're above the tree line, you level off and look over to Poe. Course? From here, it's 273.3, Poe tells you. You power up the engines and race away from the clearing, turning the shuttle until the directional heading along the bottom of your flight screen read 273.3 W. After a few minutes, you could see a huge wedge-shaped rock formation ahead, topped with a few boulders at the base of the wedge. As you circled around it, you spotted a large rectangular cave entrance on the other side, with heavily scorched durcrete shapes on either side that looked vaguely like turbo lasers. Suddenly, you realize that this looks like it was vaguely made to resemble a first-order Star Destroyer. You could see why it was called the bombing range, though, as the rock and the ground all around it was littered with bomb craters. You stop the shuttle some distance away from the rock formation and hover the shuttle, waiting for further instructions. See that cave? Poe asks you. The opening is about the size of the hangar entrance on the Resurgent class Star Destroyers, which is what you'll probably have to dock in. As you can see, we use it extensively for fighter targeting since hangars are one of the weak points in any capital carrier. Honestly, since you won't technically be flying according to any official First Order directive, they probably won't let you dock under your own power and just capture you with a tractor beam. Just in case they give you clearance, though, let's practice docking maneuvers. All shipboard hangars are equipped with kinetic containment shields, both to keep atmosphere inside and missiles and the like outside. Anything moving faster than a few meters per second is denied passage and deflected, so to pass through the shield, you have to cut the engines once you're close and creep into the hangar on repulsor power only. He turns and looks at the cave, positioning as if to continue his explanation before he pauses suddenly, his brow creasing in confusion. Wait a minute. Poe presses the button to activate the comlink, not looking at you. Control, Black Leader here. Black Leader, I read you. Control, we're going to need the hangar containment shield for this exercise. How long will you need to bring it up? Black Leader, we're powering it up now, but it'll take a minute since you haven't had a hangar attack drill in a while now. Alright, Control, just let me know when it's at full power. Roger, Black Leader. As you watch, the rim of the cave entrance begins to glow red, then gets steadily brighter as it changes from red to white, eventually holding steady at a brilliant, shimmering gleam that is almost painful to look at. Shield is at full power, Black Leader, but we're showing a faulty shield governor here. Fire a test shot so we can determine if it's just a stuck emitter. Roger, Control, aiming for low power pulse. He turns to you quickly. Just need to take control for a second. By all means, you murmur, not really knowing what the heck was going on, but not wanting to seem stupid by default. On his console, he flips a switch guard and turns the weapon mode switch to armed, low power. The cockpit lighting dims and is replaced with a dull red glow as you feel the control sticks change shape under your hands, with a button on each top and a trigger on each forward edge. In front of you, the edges of the cockpit windows have filled with streams of numbers and other data, and there is an active tactical targeting system occupying the center of each. You take your hands off the controls and hold them in the air, signaling to Poe that he is control without saying anything. Poe positions the shuttle so that the containment shield has been selected as the target. Control, firing test shot in 3, 2, 1. He pulls the right trigger and you see a large green bolt streak from somewhere to the right of the cockpit and rebound off the shield into the ground as the sudden visible shield covering the entrance flares white. That fixed it, Black Leader. All governors read nominal. You may proceed with exercise. Roger, Control, securing from combat. He turns the switch back to secured and relocks it, deactivating the tactical displays on the window and restoring normal lighting in the cockpit. Looking down at the control sticks, you see that the weapon's triggers have retreated and the controls have returned to their familiar shape. "She's all yours, Moonstaff," Poe says, his voice suddenly all business. "Bring us up close to the shield, then it's just like I said. The shield is conservative to account for all designs, so you'll have to pass through at 2 meters per second or less. Power down once you're inside, since in a real hangar you're ionizing valuable atmosphere every extra second you stay running." "You got it, Black Leader," you mutter under your breath, slightly disappointed. The cocky swagger that usually seeped through his words was suddenly gone, replaced with a much more seasoned, sober demeanor that you figured probably would usually accompanied his rank. He was no longer Poe. Now he was Black Leader, commander of the Squadron Corps for the Resistance, and you were just, well, you, the person who once thought that being Kylo Ren's Inamorta gave you rank. Determined to prove that he hadn't wasted his time by training you, you placed your hands back on the control sticks and pushed the shuttle forward, quickly closing the distance to the entrance. As you got closer, you pulled back halfway on the engine trim lever and then pulled it outward, cutting off engine power. As the shuttle coasted to a stop outside the cave's huge entrance, you turned the repulsor automatic control switch to the console to manual bypass. You pushed forward slowly on the left stick and watched the speed indicator on the console screen as the shuttle inched towards the entrance. Once it read 1.5 m/s, you held the stick there, and as the shuttle nose hit the plane of the shield, you felt the shuttle suddenly slow down as if it was suddenly pushing through gelatin. Once you've passed completely through the shield, you bring the shuttle to a stop and switch the repulsor automatic control back to normal and proceed to flip through the console screen until you find the landing gear. You press deploy, and on the screen you watch as the shuttle outline showed the landing gear deploying and the two outer wings folding back to their upright positions. Once they were in place, you slowly pushed the left stick in, lowering the shuttle until you felt the small jolt that indicated that you had landed. Out of habit, you turn to the panel to press the first button in the reactor row, but it's not there. You flip through a few pages on the console screen before you find it, on a page labeled System Power. Conveniently, there was a large button labeled Rapid Shipboard Shutdown. You press it, and the shuttle outline immediately turns red as you hear the hum of the reactor suddenly cut out underneath you. On the screen, you see a warning message flashing, "Backup, cooling active, do not secure main breakers," and somewhere outside the shuttle you can hear hissing sounds as a thin cloud of what you supposed was vented coolant formed outside the shuttle windows. "Okay," you say, letting out a deep breath as you clap your hands together. "We've landed, and I figured out how to power down the ship. Should we head back now?" "Not quite," Poe says as he adjusts himself in his chair, and it takes you a moment before the realization sinks in that you've been lured out here in a quite secluded area on a ship that you're not entirely sure you can figure out how to start up again. You were going to be out here for as long as Poe wanted to be out here, and it suddenly dawned on you that there was probably a reason for that. "Oh no, we're going to have the talk, aren't we?" you ask, blushing furiously as you turn your head away from him. At least you never had to talk to Kylo. You communicated in purely physical terms and occasionally gave him the long-winded emotional speech when the situation called for it, but you never really had a dialogue about your relationship and what it meant. Although, to be fair, maybe you would have had a lot less questions if you had. "No talk," Poe says with a light chuckle. "I just want to tell you that you don't have to worry about anything, that's all." You turn back to him as you bite your lip. "Okay, that sounds vaguely foreboding." "We're at war right now," Poe explains. "There's no good time for romance during a war." You tilt your head to the side as you consider this. "Plus, you'll be headed off soon, headed back to him. Take some time to figure things out. I'll still be here when you get back." You just shake your head from side to side. What were you even supposed to say to that? "Poe, that's..." But you don't know what to say. Not really. What were you supposed to tell him? That it wasn't fair to him? Argue that you didn't really feel anything for Kylo Ren? Insist that this wouldn't work out anyway because he was far too sweet, far too good for the likes of you? Maybe, if he were lucky, the shuttle would explode right now and save you the trouble of having to dissect and reanalyze this conversation tonight. Take some time, he repeats firmly. I'm not going anywhere. You can feel frustration bubbling inside of you. He was being far too understanding, far too considerate, and you didn't deserve it. You didn't deserve any of it, not when you were secretly looking forward to seeing Kylo again, even though you knew there was an overwhelming possibility that he was a completely different person than the one you fell in love with. Slowly, you roll your eyes back in Poe's direction. You felt something for him. That much was true, and maybe the pull to him wasn't as strong, but... A sudden thought occurs to you, slams into you like a brick to the forehead. Will you kiss me again, you ask, with only a tiny hint of urgency in your voice? Right here? Right now? Poe just smirks as he gets up, and you unbuckle yourself quickly as you follow him into the back of the transport shuttle. All of the chairs inside are narrow with stiff armrests, so you just stand in the middle of the shuttle and wrap your arms around his neck as you kiss him. Hands planted firmly on your waist, he kisses you back with soft, gentle kisses that are completely unlike anything you've ever experienced before. He hovers his lips above yours and then pulls away slightly before he presses his lips against yours again with a slight pucker. It's a tender movement, and it should feel nice, but if anything, you can't help but feel irritated by it. It was too nice, too slow, and you wanted more. Poe pulls back with a slight chuckle, and that's when you suddenly realize that he's teasing you, holding back on purpose. Bastard. This working for you? No. You put your hands on both shoulders and push them down to the floor of the shuttle, wasting no time as you climb into his lap and wrap both legs around his waist. Your mouth grabs his in an open-mouthed kiss, and he grabs your face with both hands as his tongue flicks against yours. You moan into his open mouth and nip into his bottom lip as you pull away from him, slowly, dragging it out as you go. Better. Poe just laughs as he uses one hand to brush the hair out of your face and leans forward to kiss you again. You wind your arms around him, one arm hanging languidly over his shoulder while the other one fists in his hair as you kiss him, maneuvering him so that you can kiss him the way that you want to kiss him. Poe responds to it, one hand firmly planted on your neck so that he can stroke the edge of your jaw with his thumb, the other running up and down your side over the thick fabric of the jumpsuit. This wasn't bad, you decided. This was good, and had the potential to get better. Somehow, you doubted that he would bite you so hard that your tender skin tore and bled, doubted he would squeeze you so hard it would leave a bruise, doubted he would leave purple and red marks up and down your neck to prove that you were his, but that didn't mean it wouldn't be good. It would be different, surely, but it didn't mean you wouldn't be as happy with him as you had been with Kylo. In fact, being with him could open up whole new possibilities. There were probably other things he could teach you besides piloting, things he knew that still evaded your skill set. Somehow you doubted it, but maybe he knew how to cook? That was something that you had always wanted to learn, and okay, you didn't exactly have your own kitchen here, but that was a valuable survival skill, wasn't it? And didn't Rey tell you that he had brought her all sorts of plants and flowers from other planets for her green room? Maybe he knew something about the vegetation of different planets. About herbalism, maybe? That could be interesting, and then he could also take you to all of these different planets, take you around the galaxy so that you could visit the different planets that you had only read about. Of course, then you could also teach him different languages and how to communicate on all of these planets. He had wanted to learn Tutorune for you. Heck, he had already started learning it for you, and you could help him, teach him to be as fluent as you were until you could have the whole secret conversation back and forth in front of Rey and Finn that they wouldn't be privy to. He had already probably been trained to use a blaster, but you didn't know how good he was at sparring, war fighting, or hand-to-hand combat. Maybe you could find something that you could fashion into a staff so that the both of you could spar, and then you could be the one who sat on the couch with Annie while he and Ladson battled it out. And then maybe, once your piloting lessons were over, when you had learned as much as he could teach you could take Annie and teach him how to be a pilot, and together you could teach him how to be as self-reliant as you strive to be. You weren't sure if it was supposed to be this way, if you were supposed to be making a list of the pros and cons of being with him while you kissed him. Was that what normal people thought about? Did normal people make a set of pros and cons to figure out if they wanted to get involved with someone? Or did they just jump in head first and let the details sort themselves out later, like you did with Kylo? To be fair, this situation was much, much different. Not only were you in a completely different setting, but you were also a different person from the one who had been with Kylo several years ago, and Poe and Kylo were both very different people. Although, were they, though? Were they really? They were both extremely confident people, and while Kylo used his confidence to intimidate others, Poe used his confidence to try to help them. They were both headstrong, a bit proud, and could even be a bit impatient at times, although you had to admit that Kylo far surpassed Poe in that area. It was like they shared some similar personality traits but existed on opposite ends of the spectrum, Kylo using his talents to hurt, and Poe using his to help. They were both attractive, confident people who were sure of themselves, and following that logic, it only made good sense that you felt something for both of them. The one main difference here was that Poe lacked something that Kylo had a firm mastery of, the Force, and that made things both complicated and easier at the same time. You felt something for Poe, and the pull to him didn't feel as strong as the pull towards Kylo, but maybe that was only because Poe didn't really have a sensitivity to the Force. What if you were only attracted to Kylo because of his Force sensitivity, and it had been pulling you towards someone of a kindred nature in order to help awaken your dormant Force abilities? What if the only reason you were attracted to Kylo was because the potential of the Force inside you reacted to his power and created a bond so enthralling that you didn't dare question it or try to break away? If that was the case, then you could never be sure if what you felt for Kylo was absolutely genuine, and you would always be wondering if it was simply the Force that made you yearn for him and nothing more. Everyone had some small degree of Force and sensitivity inside of them, considering that the Force was essential to life, but Poe's was so low that you couldn't even really feel it. So you couldn't say that it was the Force that attracted you to him at all. That meant that whatever you felt towards him, whatever magnetism, whatever pull, was coming from you and you alone. It was coming purely from whatever feelings you had for him, and you could be sure that there was nothing otherworldly intervening in your emotions. It meant that what you felt for Poe would probably never be as strong as what you felt for Kylo, but at least you could be sure that it was coming from you and not some weird Force bond that you had inadvertently created. And Poe was patient and kind and sweet and good. That was something that you had picked up on immediately, whether through the Force or your own intuition. He was pure at heart. He wanted to help people, saw the goodness in them, and wanted to care for them selflessly. On one hand, it made you almost want to be better yourself, but on the other hand, it made you resent him just a little bit. Leia had been quick to point out the darkness in you, and even though you had trained with Rey and made great strides with her, your lightsaber was still amber, reflecting both the light and the darkness in you. Whether you had been irreparably tainted by your Force bond with Kylo, you couldn't say, but you would never be able to achieve the light that Poe had, just as you would never be able to surrender to the darkness as Kylo had. You would be caught in the middle, of course, until you made a choice. And whether you wanted to admit it or not, the time to make a choice was coming very, very soon. Eventually, Poe slides back from you a little ways, lifting his hand slightly to brush your cheek with his thumb. That was fun, but we need to be getting back soon, or they're going to start wondering where we went. I'm pretty sure they can figure it out, you tell him. Apparently, it's obvious. You mimic Rey's accent teasingly, and Poe laughs as you scramble off of him regardless. You reach down a hand and help pull him to his feet, and you stand there, hands linked, not quite sure what to say. You know, you never did show me that sunset, you tell him as you make your way back to the pilot's seat. Poe just chuckles. I'll make sure you see it before you leave. Oh yeah? You ask teasingly. It's a promise, Poe replies with a wink, and you turn to him, screwing up your face while Poe just laughs. I don't mind making promises if I know I can definitely keep them. You just laugh as you shake your head. I guess we'll see then. As you headed back towards the Resistance base, you couldn't help but think about Kylo, about Poe, about whether you really belonged with Kylo Ren and the First Order, or on the Resistance base with Poe, or with Sadie back at your old academia, or on another planet entirely. As much as you wanted to know what the future had in store for you, Latson was right. There was no way to know for sure. I guess we'll see then. I guess we'll see.